Hi, this is Libin, Chacko, Kurian from Start Media Group, and we are at Cargo Africa 2023 happening in Johannesburg, South Africa. The movement of perishables is one of the trickiest part in logistics. The logistics companies and the professionals go a long way to preserve the quality of perishables. South Africa is a country that produces, moves and exports a lot of perishables, and control these movements. To ensure the best quality, you need to have the best infrastructure and the cool chain. Joining us today is Vijan Chetty. He is the General Manager, Perishable Products Export Control Board, PPECB of South Africa, and he is also a board member of the Cold Chain Association. Thank you so much for joining us today, Vijan.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Can you introduce our audience to the perishable products and the export industry of South Africa? What are the biggest challenges that the PPECB deals with and trying to address it?
PPECB stands for Perishable Products Export Control Board. It's a parastatal organization that reports to the Department of Agriculture within South Africa. And we don't only deal with the cold chain, but with the inspection, phytosanitary, and the cold chain management of perishable products from South Africa. So we primarily deal with exports. And some of our challenges that we experience logistically is that 99% of our export volume move via sea freight and only 1% via air freight. But between both those modes of transportation, it's very similar challenges. And one of the challenges is infrastructure in terms of port infrastructure, in terms of airport infrastructure. We do have really good airports within South Africa, based strategically in Johannesburg, Capetown, in Durban, which is the most common used airports in terms of export. But some of these airports are not used to its optimum at this moment in time. Cold storage space is a problem within South Africa, and I think it's a global challenge as well because of the increase of products. And the logistical challenges within the cold chain is a global problem in that not many people understand cold chain and how to handle product. They know it's flowers, blueberries, they know it's citrus, and they treat all the products the same. And that's the biggest challenge. Each product should be treated separately.
Can you specifically address the cold chain requirement of the perishable that are to be exported from South Africa? Take us through the entire journey of a perishable product farm to fork. Who are the stakeholders involved and what are the real gaps that you're trying to fill?
Okay, firstly, I'll take you through the sort of value chain, farm to fork. What transpires is that whenever any product, be it apples, be it pears, be it citrus, is produced, it's at a pack house level, at the pack house. So the grower harvests the product, put it into cartons, obviously goes through a process within the pack house of waxing for some products and washing, and then it goes through a sorting process as well. And through that sorting process, only the best products are selected for export from South Africa. So once that is placed into cartons, into pallets, we as PPECB inspect the product. We inspect for quality in terms of marking requirements. Does the pallet carton meet the marking requirements? Is the pallet stable? It's free from bark and phytosanitary requirements. To the product itself, where we inspect the product for externally for blemishes, for example, for cosmetic factors, and also for internal factors, where we cut the fruit and have a look at it if it meets minimum requirements for internal. So for some of our products, we also do certain internal tests where we test the product for sugar levels, for TSS, for various other factors as well for quality purposes, as well as phytosanitary purposes. So once a product passes for export, when we put our approval on it, then it moves into the cold chain environment. And from the cold chain environment, this is where all the challenges occur. So it moves into a cold storage. First of all, it moves via truck to a port facility sometimes, or sometimes it goes into a cold storage at the farm. And then it moves into containers. From the containers, it moves to the port. From the port, it moves onto a vessel. And from the vessel, it moves to the market. So that's the logistical value chain. So there's various stakeholders within the value chain as well, from the producer that produces the product to an exporter, to an agent, and some exporters have agents acting on their behalf, to cold storage facilities, to transporters, to port handlers, and the list goes on in terms of the logistical value chain. So you see, it's a very complex environment to work with many, many stakeholders throughout the value chain that need to understand the product and their role within the value chain.
You mentioned one thing that most of the perishable goes by sea, and very low volume that goes by earth. But there is scope for improvement in the airport infrastructure. So can you specifically, which are those gaps that you're trying to fill in, specifically from the air cargo point, can we see more perishables from South Africa moving to the air?
There's a role for both air and sea in any country. And it's the most highly perishable products that move by sea. That's first, right? Because it's very time-sensitive cargo. So we must understand that time-sensitive cargo is essential to move via air, and that's where air plays a vital role in this. The speed in which it's delivered from to the consumer or the buyer is utmost importance in terms of the air freight industry. So we need to understand that, the role that air freight industry has and the speed that it needs to move in order to get that product across to its consumer. So I'll give you an example. Flowers, blueberries, highly perishable products that needs to be on the buyer's table ASAP because it's very time sensitive. So the challenges within air freight is that within South Africa specifically, it's our distance to markets. I mean, our market is like Asia, it's like Europe, and we're very far away. And we must understand that as compared to, for example, in the Netherlands, going across to France or going across to Germany. Very close. And that's our biggest challenge within South Africa, that our geographical position in terms of the market for air freight. So saying that, we as South Africans will need to react to that and ensure that there's no delays in terms of the value chain along the way, that everything is a seamless process. You cannot miss a flight. Missing a flight means that that product cannot be exported because it needs to be on the table the next day or at a restaurant the next day. So that's one of our biggest challenges within South Africa is our speed and our distance from market. So in order for us to get that right, as I mentioned earlier, that everyone along the value chain needs to understand that. Unfortunately, it's not the case. We do not understand. We do not understand that blueberries is different from flowers. We store them together, but it should be stored differently at different temperatures. The packaging should be different. So those are some of the challenges, and this is what we in South Africa, as PPECB, as the CCA as well, trying to educate the industry on what to do to create handling procedures in terms of each product and how to handle those products. And we're also conducting some research within South Africa on how to handle products.
You repeatedly mentioned one of the challenges that value chain not understanding that how to handle the different products differently. So I can also see that there is an effort, intention from the PPECB to understand those challenges and respond to that by educating and creating research things. Can you tell me how some of the stakeholders like the logistics companies, farmers from the beginning, for example, or the cold storage companies, how are they responding to you?
South Africa is very different to any other organization internationally. We have the PPECB in South Africa and it's regulation that we need to comply with. So in terms of relationships, although we have regulations, we're not the policemen as PPECB. We see them as partners. We see everyone as partners. And we partner with industry. We collaborate with the industry. We create understanding why instead of enforcement. We don't just enforce. We also understand the challenges and try and work around the challenges to the most amicable solution for our industry as well. So in terms of the buy-in from industry, it's not a challenge as such. We need to create understanding and reasoning why. And we need to give them time to change as well because it's a lot of investment that needs to be done. And in certain industries, we did this quite remarkably because having those engagements with the industry, asking them what they can do to assist in terms of a better product and not just enforcing it. So constantly engaging, constantly requesting information, constantly talking to our service providers in terms of the advantages of making changes. And to be honest to you, it's become self-regulated where the industry knows what to do on their own. Go ahead and make these changes instead of enforcing those changes.
You mentioned that educating the stakeholders about all these challenges and improving the logistics. Also, you mentioned about the research that PPECB reports you put out. Can you elaborate a little bit about what is the value that they bring in? What are the kind of information that you pass on to the stakeholders with education and the research reports?
In terms of research and trials, we always had a research department, and over the years we've improved on it in terms of research. And what research does is we learn from this. Research gives us information and knowledge that we need to take back to our industry. And that's what we do. We commence with recent research in terms of the air freight industry, where we're not only looking at the final mile or the last leg of the value chain, we're looking at the total value chain. We are reviewing from farms, and our research starts not at the air cargo, at the airport. It starts on the farm, when it's produced, when the flowers are cut, when it's going into cold storage, when it's being packaged. That's where our research starts. So we're evaluating the total value chain in terms of not only temperature, but how does packaging impact temperature? How does cold storage on the farm impact temperature? How does the truck, the transportation from the farm to the airport impact temperature? When you package your cargo for air freight, when do you package it? Do you cool your product first and then package it? Or do you package your product first in terms of skids and then send it through? And how does that impact temperature? So we look at various variables within the value chain and how does that impact? We have various standards and recommendations and protocols within both sea freight and air freight. And we're using that knowledge as a baseline to say, this is what's supposed to happen. Is it happening? And how can we improve on our value chain? So we're using very scientific methodologies of research and trials and using that information effectively out there.
You have an experience of 2 decades in the perishable industry. So can you give me an idea about what a person learns from this industry and particularly from the South African market? From a very personal point of view.
So change is inevitable. You cannot plan 10 years ahead. And we used to do that, 5-year plans, 10-year plans. But now you have to have a forecast, an idea, and a vision of what's coming your way. But you need to plan shorter period of time. COVID has taught us that as well. If you plan 2-3 years ahead, it's no good. You need to plan a year ahead, 6 months ahead, a few months ahead. That's my greatest learning, because we always had a vision of where we're going, but the planning of now for the year ahead, we never looked at. We looked at long-term visions. How we get there is very important. So it's baby steps towards that vision. And that's the most important thing that I've learned over the last 3 years, because you cannot plan way ahead, 10, 20 years, you're wasting your time. You need to plan 1 year, 2 year ahead. So in terms of these challenges as well, look at these challenges and set targets and goals for the short term and set tangible targets, something achievable. No, you're setting targets that are not achievable. You're wasting your time. And that's what I've learned the most. If you do not set achievable targets where people can envisage these targets, you're wasting your time.
You're also the board member for the Ocean Association. Can you give an idea about how you implement, what is the effect of some of these in your activities in the CCA or PCEB?
The CCA, we look at, seamless cold chain throughout the value chain. And we look at how we can assist all stakeholders throughout the value chain, be it in Europe, be it in Asia, be it in South Africa. The CCA signed an MOU with PPECB in South Africa in terms of research and trial. So in terms of CCA as well, our biggest challenge is people not understanding. And that's the greatest challenge that we have. So we created technical committees within the CCA. So these technical committees consist of members of the CCA where they have input into complex matters, because me sitting here, I don't have the answers to all solutions out there. So we need to sit together with competent people from industry and determine how do we go about handling these complex matters. And we take one at a time. For example, cargo labels. Is it correct? Is it incorrect? And I can tell you now, cargo labels are not correct at this moment in time. How do we standardize that? How do we change it with industry? And a simple thing like that can become very complex. So the CCA is working with technical committees within the CCA, looking at tangible solutions that we can put forward to organizations like IATA, where you as a stakeholder within the air freight value chain, it may be difficult for you to voice your opinion with organizations. And the CCA is your voice at these organizations.
Thank you so much, Vijan, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.